Numerous children of the Boulder terror attack suspect to be deported. He was the shirtless guy that was acting like he was a landscaper while Jews were in their demonstration Run for Their Lives, a grassroots organization against Hamas terror. And he was there, and he threw Molotov cocktails. Luckily, I guess, he was captured on a cell phone video at the scene. He's already admitted it, but the family is now being deported. They're being processed for expedited removal back to Egypt. It will allow them to be deported without an immigration court hearing, and you just listen for it because it's coming. There's some Democrat going, wait a minute, we can't just deport the whole family. Yes, we can deport the whole family, and we should. Extremism has got to be choked out. You know, we are told that we've opened our borders, and this is so bizarre. We've opened our borders for a humanitarian crisis. Let me ask you, what humanitarian crisis? What is it? Well, it's Syria, Glenn. Really? Because we didn't have this kind of humanitarian crisis during World War II, where most of the world was on fire. We didn't have this kind of refugee problem. This is a humanitarian crisis. We have to open our arms. We have to open our borders. We must. Our banks. Millions are fleeing war and poverty and persecution. But I have eyes. Do you have eyes? I mean, I've seen the footage. We see the lines at the border. We see who's showing up. And something just doesn't add up. It's just not right. First of all, 12 million refugees from Syria, Sudan, Ukraine. 12 million. Okay, all right. Let's just think about this here for a second. 12 million refugees. I mean, the United States took 400,000 refugees in during World War II. 400,000 refugees during World War II. We have, what did we do? 8 million, 10 million here recently. And they're not all from Syria and Sudan and Ukraine. They're from China. They're from Saudi Arabia. They're from Afghanistan. They're from Mexico. They're from Guatemala. They're from everywhere. That's just weird, isn't it? And the other thing is, look who's coming. It's not families. It's not mothers clutching their children. It's not the elderly or the infirm. No. Overwhelmingly, the refugees filling the streets of Berlin and Paris and London and now American cities are young men, 20-somethings, male, fit, angry, and alone. Aren't those the ones that should be defending their country? Here's a question that nobody wants you to ask. Where are their wives? Where are their sisters? Did they just leave their sisters behind? Where are the daughters? Did they leave their daughters behind? What kind of man flees his own country, flees war, and leaves his mom behind? What kind of man watches his own country burn and then turns and runs without the people he loves? He turns and runs, not to fight, but to apply for asylum in a place that he wants to reshape in the image of the country he's fleeing from. See, there's some questions we have to ask. We're told that this is just like World War II. I mean, these are desperate people, like the Jews of Europe, just begging for safety. But the math doesn't work here. After one of the worst genocides in human history, we took in 400,000 displaced people over 4 years. And now we're told we have to accept millions, not thousands, millions of military-aged men from countries where the problem isn't persecution of Muslims, but the persecution by Muslims. Let me ask you, why is Syria in ruins today? Yes, Assad is a dictator. Yes, he was. But also because ISIS and Islamist radicals took hold of that land and drove millions from their homes, especially the Christians, the Druze, the Yazidis, the Jews, the secular Muslims. Why is Sudan in chaos? Islamist factions. Why did Afghanistan collapse the second we left? because the Taliban had more spine than the National Army that we armed and trained for 20 years. And what did the men of Afghanistan do? They fled. And now they demand asylum in Europe, leaving their daughters behind to be re-enslaved. And if they hated Islam so much, or the Islamist rule, why are they now pushing for Sharia law in all of these countries? I don't understand. And by the way, if you come here, you should know that one of the most sacred ideas from Western civilization is that women and children go first. From the Titanic to every single battlefield, that is the measure of a man. Women and children first. And yet somehow in this global exodus, this new exodus, we're supposed to believe that the noble, the persecuted, and the pious are the men who ran without their wives or their daughters or their sisters or their children. Now, as bad as that is, I think it gets worse. Not only do they come here after they have abandoned their duty to their country and abandoned their duty to their wives and children, they're demanding benefits and shelter and open borders, and they bring with them the disdain for the nations that took them in. They march in our own streets and chant against the Jews. They burn our flags. They demand Sharia law. They mock the cultures that have offered them protection. The unspoken contract that gratitude is a currency of refuge. That's torn up. I mean, I don't mind helping people, and I don't do it. I don't help people so they say thank you. It is nice. It's not required. It's not expected, but it is nice. But have you seen any gratitude? Any? No, I see the exact opposite. When these young men come into our countries and they commit violence, just as one did in Boulder, Colorado, an illegal Egyptian immigrant firebombed Jewish protesters, we're told now, yesterday, one of the Democrats said, this has nothing to do with the border. Really? Really? Wow. Well, Biden did let him in 2022, and then he overstayed his visa twice. But that man yelling "Free Palestine" as he throws fire into a crowd of American Jews, and we're not supposed to tie this to an American crisis. You see, he was here on a visa because he had applied for refugee status. From Egypt? A guy who hates Jews? A Muslim who hates Jews from Egypt? What are you fleeing exactly in Egypt? Because I bet you're mighty popular there. We're not asking the right questions, and compassion is a virtue until compassion becomes cowardice, and that's where we are now. There is no reason why any sovereign nation should tolerate imported extremists, especially when the greatest threat to the native people of the countries these men are fleeing is from Islamic extremism. They are the rot they say they are escaping. And then they're planting that rot in our soil, the soil that gave them safety. This is not immigration. This is infiltration. This is an invasion. And we need to stop lying to ourselves about that. Okay, this is not 1945. This is something entirely new. This is something orchestrated, something very dangerous. And if we can't find the will to tell the truth, we can't draw the line between compassion and self-destruction, we're not going to survive with anything. We won't have anything left. The truth is, the West isn't being asked to shelter the world. It's being asked to surrender. And I'm not one ready to kneel at anybody's feet. So I have some questions, some critical thinking questions. Because remember, critical thinking is the immune system of a free society. It's what allows individuals to separate truth from propaganda, wisdom from the noise, and facts from manipulation. And without it, you don't think. People don't think. They absorb. They're shaped. They don't choose. They react. They don't lead. They follow. That's why critical thinking is so important. Critical thinking keeps us from being ruled by emotion. Remember, facts don't care about your feelings. Well, why is it that everybody's just caring about their feelings? Because they're not thinking critically anymore. That's why they're ruled by feelings and emotion, peer pressure and fear. Critical thinking, asking the critical questions, the right questions, equips you to challenge power and hold the line when popular opinion is wrong. And popular opinion is often wrong. It guards liberty by preventing the slow creep of tyranny disguised as progress. And that's usually where tyranny comes from, the creep of progress or fear. What causes fear? Not knowing the truth. If critical thinking is lost, lies spread unchecked, and they're repeated over and over again until they become truth. Men can have babies. Men can have babies. Men can have babies. Until somebody stands up and say, no, they can't. No, they can't have babies. Period. But if you don't stand up, if you're not thinking, if you're just following, governments grow more authoritarian. And there's more and more blind compliance. And education becomes indoctrination. Does any of this sound familiar, like a road we're on? Free speech begins to collapse under social pressure because no one will question the mob. Evil disguises itself as virtue because no one asks for proof anymore. People feel, but they don't think. They obey, but they don't understand. They suffer, but they don't have any idea why. A society without any kind of critical thinking is not a society. It is nothing more than a herd of cattle. But if critical thinking is found again, then truth rises again, even when it's uncomfortable. Bad ideas die in the light of scrutiny and thinking and questioning. And the powerful once again fear accountability. There is no accountability because we're not asking critical questions. Citizens, if you ask critical questions and you engage in critical thinking, citizens become participants again and not spectators to their own demise. Debates begin again, which sharpen our minds rather than just destroy reputations. And liberty has a fighting chance again because a thinking people is a free people. So let me just take 1 minute to break, and then we're going to come back and ask some questions about what's really going on here. What should we really be thinking about when we look at what's happening to our borders and the people who have arrived and we're taking in because we're so compassionate? We'll do that in 60 seconds. First,
NMLS 182334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org. APR for rates in the 5 starts at 6.799% for well-qualified borrowers. Call 800-906-2440 for details about credit costs and terms.
You know, it's really funny that I do this job for a living because this is not the job that I thought I was going to do. I mean, I started out doing, comedy on making fun of things and not being serious about anything because I grew up in an alcoholic family and I was the one that made everybody laugh and try to make everybody look the other way. And, I don't like confrontation. And here I am. Look at this. And in my own life, I avoid stuff like crazy. I don't like confrontation. And when it comes to like finances, I avoid like the plague. I don't want to look at that. I don't know. And we can tell ourselves, well, it's complicated. It's too complicated. Or I don't have time. Or, it's too depressing to think about right now. But you have to think about it. And here's what I've learned. I'll do this later. It never comes. The later never comes. It just gets more expensive and more troublesome. And then the rates go up and the prices go up. And if you're sitting on a mortgage that's bleeding you dry, later could be costing you hundreds of dollars every single month. American Financing is there to make it easy to stop that bleeding. And they're a family-owned mortgage company, not some mega bank. They don't work for the lenders. They work for you. And they've been helping people just like you get their financial house in order for over 2 decades now. So whether you're looking to refi, consolidate debt, or just get a handle on your budget, the call takes about 10 minutes. Don't put it off till later. Do it right now. 10 minutes. Start taking control of your finances again. Start the process. They'll work to save you money. The average listener of this program saves about $830 every single month. That'll give you some breathing room. Do it right now. American Financing, 800-906-2440, 800-906-2440, or americanfinancing.net. 10 seconds, station ID. Okay, so let's look at some of the questions that we should be asking. I mean, first of all, when you look at the border crisis, when you look at what's happening in our countries, what do you see? You see old women and young children? No. You see young men in their prime. No wives, no daughters, no elders, just young men. So the first question is, where are the women and the children? Did they just leave them behind? And if so, what does that say about the character of the men who are coming here? And from there, the questions get a little harder and more important. If these men are indeed fleeing Islamist extremism, why do they arrive in the West and fight for Islamist principles? Let's look at Venezuelans. If they really are escaping persecution and trouble and death cults in Venezuela, why do they come here and try to take over neighborhoods and threaten death and join cultish-like gangs? The Islamists, why do they demand Sharia law? Why do they attack Jewish citizens? Why do they march through London and Paris and Denmark screaming death to Israel? If they're truly victims of radical Islam, why do they become the ambassadors to radical Islam the moment they resettle? That doesn't make sense, does it? And if they're seeking freedom, why do they wish to dismantle ours? Here's another one. Why are nearly all Western nations, from Canada to Germany to the United States, responding exactly the same way? Same immigration policies, same laws, same slogans, same censorship, same framing in the media. In some cases, word for word in the laws and the headlines. If this isn't coordinated, how do you explain that? More in a minute.
This is Glenn Beck.
If you own a home, there's a good chance you got a checklist of projects that you'll get to someday. You know, one of these days I'm going to get to that. Maybe it's the guest room, maybe it's the garage, maybe it's the gutters. But let me tell you, gutters don't belong on the I got to get around to that someday list. Because when they fail, they just don't make a mess. They can wreck your roof, your siding, your foundation. I have up at the ranch, I put these, we have barnwood siding on the side of the ranch. And one of the gutters went. Because it was all stuffed up. I wasn't paying attention. I wasn't around. And I get there, and all of this, the siding is just destroyed. Last summer, I get up there, and it's all destroyed. Why? Because I didn't do anything with the gutters. When they fail, they wreck everything. Leaf Filter can fix that problem before it starts. They're America's #1 gutter protection company for a reason. Their experts clean out your existing gutters. They realign and seal them, and they install a macro mesh barrier that blocks debris while letting water flow freely. And once it's installed, you don't have to think about it again. No more climbing ladders, no more scooping junk out. I want you to imagine that for a moment, just never having to clean out your gutters again. I know, good feeling, isn't it? Get gutters that do their job in every season. Schedule your free inspection. Get up to 30% off your entire purchase at leaffilter.com/glennbeck. leaffilter.com/glennbeck. So I've issued this question to the Anti-Defamation League every day since the shooting in Colorado. I was called a danger, an extremist, a radical, strangely an anti-Semite for warning the Jews of America and anybody who likes Jews that we should probably stand up and stop the road that we're going on, because Marxism and radicalism and anti-Semitism, they always seem to go, hand in hand. When you're against the West, when you're against the Western values, when you're claiming that America is an evil place, usually Israel is an evil place too, and anti-Semitism creeps in. And I warned that we would see the exact kind of hatreds that we saw in the streets in Germany and Europe in the 1930s. We'd see them here on the streets of America. And the Anti-Defamation League said that I was a fearmonger and a hater and an anti-Semite. And I've asked every day, and I'm still waiting for a question, Anti-Defamation League. Tell me, you want to retract that? Do you want to say, when I said you have to truly remember, never forget, right? To truly remember. And the reason why you don't forget is you don't say, I always want to remember the oven door is closing. You say, I want to remember so I can remember the seeds when they were planted and what watered those seeds, so I can pull that up from the root the minute it sprouts. Never forget doesn't mean let's remember the Holocaust. It means let's remember what leads to the Holocaust so we can stop it. But somehow or another, that was too radical for the Anti-Defamation League. What do you say about it now? What do you say about it now that it's here on our streets? I'd just like to know. Am I still a crazy extremist that hates Jews somehow or another? Here's the questions that we have to ask. If we are going to solve anything, we have to start using critical thinking again. A, why are so few women and children among the refugee populations that are coming into all of our countries? What ideologies do these young men have when they're coming into our country? And why are they not being vetted or challenged? Why does no one seem to care? Why do refugees from Islamist regimes hold so many anti-Semitic or anti-Western beliefs when they get here? And why do they not change when they're in their host country? Why are Western media outlets using nearly identical language to describe all of these events? Why do they use almost exactly the same language and tactics to dismantle anyone like me who questions these events? And who's coordinating that narrative? Because, gosh, I just don't think that it's happening almost word for word in laws and media reports, exactly the same in 40 different languages. It's weird. Is there any relationship at all with the rise of anti-Semitism in any of this? Why are Western governments criminalizing criticism of immigration policy while ignoring the extremist behaviors from some migrants? That's a weird one. I can't question in a culture that holds free speech up as one of the highest ideals, but in a law-abiding society and one where we have blind justice, or supposed to have, the extremist behaviors, they're not punished, but me questioning, I am. That's weird. Can anybody explain that one? Why are the same open border policies being adopted simultaneously across every Western nation, regardless of party leadership? Why is that happening? If the refugees claim persecution, why do they persecute others once they arrive, particularly the Jews, the Christians, women, and gays? Let me ask you this, when you're speaking of women, the views of these guys and what they have, their view of women, how does that fit in a liberal society? How does a society who says they care about women dismiss and ignore the views of the men who literally look at women like something they can rape and do? Let me ask you this. What would the world look like if these millions of young men stayed behind to fight for their countries instead of abandoning them and apparently their mothers and their wives and their children, their sisters? Can I ask this question? Is compassion being manipulated as a weapon against Western stability? I mean, don't you think these questions should be asked and then answered?
They seem like good questions. Questions that maybe should be asked and answered before you import many people who have very questionable answers to them. But I guess that implies that your goal is to protect Jews. Your goal is to protect innocent people. If your goal is
Jews, I'd like to protect all people.
Yeah. If your goal is not to protect innocent people, if your goal is instead seemingly to wipe Jews off the planet, which again is a pretty significant chunk of the Democratic Party at this point. Mm-hmm. I can give you the names of the representatives. We've said them many, many times. These are the people that were cheering on the pro-Palestinian movement on October 8th. Now, look, if you watched that and were horrified by October 7th and talked about it over and over again, and then, I don't know, in December, you were like, I as much as you have to do something here if you're Israel, I'm a little concerned about how this is playing out. There's some sympathy you could have with an argument. You could have an argument about, hey, I feel really bad for the people in Gaza who had nothing to do with this and are suffering right now. Of course, that's an idea you could talk about.
I do.
Yeah, but you don't get any sympathy for that argument when you were trying to make it on October 8th before the military even went in. When you were protesting and acting like you were just criticizing Israel the day after they watched 1,000+ of their people murdered and raped for no reason whatsoever. That's not a day to jump into the movement on the pro-Palestinian side. I'm sorry.
So let me give you this, Stu. You just tell me how this ends. If you look at the MI5 terror watch list in England, okay, Great Britain, on MI5's terror watch list, there are 43,000 individuals, okay? 90% of them are jihadis. 90% of the 43,000 people that are on the terror watch list are jihadis. Now, let's think about this for a second. Is that a problem if you're Great Britain? Well, 40,000 people is larger than the entire size of Hamas on April 7th. 40,000 is larger than the entire size of the ISIS army that launched the attack on Iraq. 40,000 is half the size of the British army. I don't know. I think I'd have a problem if I were English. And you know what? That number is bigger here. That just seems to be, I don't know, a little disturbing. What does that tell you about use critical thinking? If it's half the size of the British army, if they're on the streets, if they're already organized, if there's already no-go zones, if the government is already afraid of them, if they're losing control of the streets, if politicians are turning a blind eye to the rape of their own population, what does that tell you about the shape Great Britain is going to be in a very short period of time? And they're still letting people in, by the way. Let me give you this. Does this sound unreasonable to you, Stu? If I came up with 10 points on immigration that has to be done right now. Let's say I'm in Great Britain, or I'm in, I'm in the Netherlands, where, the population is very small and millions of people have come in. If I said, look, we have to do these 10 things. We have to halt asylum admissions right now because we don't even know who's in here. We have to deploy our military at our borders so no one can come in without authorization. We have to close the asylum centers that are now welcoming people in as reception centers and giving everybody things that they can live on, and giving them hotels and everything else. We have to stop the family reunification thing. Look, if you're a guy in 20 and now you say, I want my family here, no, we cannot take any more because we don't know even who everybody is. If they started saying, you know what, this particular group in, let's say you're in Europe, Syrians, this is a very dangerous group, and they are now coming in and causing real problems. We have to deport the Syrian nationalists, okay? Or at least we have to say one strike policy. You get in trouble once and you're out. We're going to evict you from the 5-star hotels and the food that we've given you because you've been here now for a while and you don't seem to be assimilating. You don't seem to be doing anything but taking. We're not going to build any new facilities. We're going to evict you from these. We're going to revoke any national or dual nationality. If you're convicted of a serious crime, you lose the dual nationality. We're also going to withdraw from any international convention that says we have to do this. And then we want some legal reforms here to facilitate the deportations. We're not going to get bogged down. We have taken millions of people in. Crime is out of control. We have lost control of our streets, and we need the court system to facilitate the deportations of people who are criminals. Do you think any of those are reasonable?
Sure. There's some common sense in many of them, yeah.
Okay. So this is what Geert Wilders, the leader of the Dutch Party for Freedom, he introduced the 10-point immigration plan, and this has set the country on fire. And I don't think necessarily with the regular folk. Maybe it does, but it set the country on fire. Everybody, I mean, he has withdrawn. His party was the largest part of the ruling coalition, and they just pulled out because everybody else said, nope, we're not doing any of those. What do you mean you're not doing any? Have you seen the streets? And they say that Geert, because it's an extreme position. No, there's a difference between common sense. And the longer you reject common sense, the more extreme the answer will be. There's a difference between extremism and common sense. And the only reason why common sense turns into extremism is because you continually deny common sense. And you say that anybody who believes in common sense is an extremist. And then what happens? Because those people have been isolated and been told all of your values are evil, when those values are the values that built the nation, then you have unscrupulous people stand up who don't have the nation's best interest, who don't have freedom, as we all like to enjoy, at the top of their list of things. They come and say, you know what? You're not wrong. You're not wrong. I'm with you. But they add a few other things that are extreme. That's how a country grows extremists. And unless we can ask questions, not be shouted down, not be in Europe, not be thrown in jail for asking questions or questioning the authority or saying, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. You're going to grow extremists, and Geert Wilders will be the least of your problems. You will pine for the days when you thought Geert Wilders was your biggest problem. All right, back in just a minute. Let me tell you about our sponsor this half hour. It's Legacy Box. You know, there's some memories that deserve more than just a box in the attic. And I'm talking about the old tapes, the films, the photos that tell your family's story. The ones that only exist in that one copy, and you know the ones. The clip of your kids running through the sprinkler, your parents' wedding day, your grandpa's voice on a scratchy VHS, laughing about something you can't quite make out anymore. These aren't just memories, these are treasures. This is your family history, and they are fading. That's why I want to send you to Legacy Box. They make it so easy to preserve everything. You fill your box with your old tapes, your films, your photos, and they send you all the packaging you need. And their team of expert technicians, they digitize everything by hand right here in the U.S. You get your originals back, plus digital copies that you can share with your family or just keep safe for the future. It is the simplest way to pass down something that actually matters, something real, something your kids will thank you for. Don't let your family story fade away on outdated formats. Preserve it, share it, pass it on. Go to legacybox.com/records. 50% off today. legacybox.com/records.
They want you silent, obedient, and blind. Well, shoot, here we are with open eyes and a bit of rebellious nature. Hold the line, my friends. Glenn Beck will be back in a minute.
Well, here's something that will keep you up tonight. When you were sleeping, someone could have started the process of legally stealing your home. No breaking and entering, no alarms going off, just paperwork and a computer. In 2025, AI has turned home theft into a white-collar crime, and the mechanics are frighteningly simple and similar in episode after episode of this. The thieves forge your signature on transfer documents. They create fake notary stamps that look completely real. They file these bogus papers for the county for pocket change. Your home title quietly moves from your name to theirs. And the first sign of trouble usually comes months later, a foreclosure notice or a credit alert or anything that is going to get papers in the mail. Hey, what's going on? How come you haven't paid your loan? Well, criminals have taken out these loans using your home as collateral. You didn't take out the loans. You don't have the money. The money's vanished, and now you're left fighting to prove you actually own your own home. This is your action plan. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. Enter the promo code STU. You'll get a free title history report showing if anyone has already targeted your property. You also get the daily monitoring of your title and instant alerts if anyone files fake documents, for example. Up to $1 million of legal coverage is included, too, if fraud does happen. So check it out. Technology is changing the world. Don't let it change the name on your home's title. Go to HomeTitleLock.com. The promo code is Blaze. HomeTitleLock.com.
Last night I get a call late at night from my wife. I'm in West Palm, and she's back home, and one of our children's friends was suicidal and alone, and she had to go out in the middle of the night and just check, and it was terrifying. Please, if you have young kids, read Jonathan Haidt. Do not give your kids social media, phones, and everything else. Don't do it. Please. It's a mistake I think we all made. Learn from our mistakes. Don't give your kids phones or